Good morning. Today we are announcing charges against 13 individuals for their alleged role in a cruel and malicious fraud scheme targeting elderly Americans. Many of them were right here in Massachusetts. As alleged, these defendants ran a sophisticated criminal enterprise from organized call centers in the Dominican Republic. Their goal was to trick our parents, grandparents over their life savings under false pretenses, and they succeeded in stealing millions. The scheme worked like this. Elderly victims received calls from someone pretending to be a grandchild in urgent distress, claiming to be in car accidents, arrested, or otherwise in trouble. It is alleged that the defendants hired callers known as openers, who posed as the grandchild purporting to be in an emergency. For example, callers would tell the elderly victim, "I've been in an accident," or "I need money to post bail." As if that wasn't bad enough, the defendants hired closers, who allegedly pretended to be lawyers demanding cash to resolve the fake emergencies. Once the elderly victims were convinced, and many were, they were directed to hand over thousands of dollars in cash. Individuals known as runners in the United States were then allegedly dispatched to collect that money, and sometimes using rideshare drivers who had no idea that they were being used as part of a scam. Unfortunately, the fraud did not always stop after the first payment. In many instances, these defendants allegedly called the victims again and again, telling the panicked elderly victims that there had been a miscarriage or that someone had died in a crash, pushing them to send even more money. This was not a one-off scam. This was a highly coordinated criminal operation with a network of runners here in the United States, including in Massachusetts, who actually went to victims' homes to pick up the money. Often these scammers allegedly exploited unsuspecting rideshare drivers, using them as mules and taking advantage of people just trying to do their jobs. Once the money was in hand, it was laundered and sent to the Dominican Republic. These scams are not just financially devastating, they are emotionally traumatizing. Many victims not only lost their savings, but their sense of safety, judgment, and trust in the world around them. Some were too ashamed to tell their families what happened. Others never recovered from the loss. The stories are truly heartbreaking. I'm here to say that we have had enough of this. Preying on our elderly and the alleged conduct by these depraved individuals is ruthless and immoral. We will not stand by and allow this to continue. So the message is for today. For others committing these types of crimes, we are looking for you and we will find you. And we will bring you to justice no matter where in the world you are located. And to the public listening today, please know that we are here to help protect you. If you believe you have been a victim of this type of scam, please let us know. Do not be ashamed. These are sophisticated crimes and often difficult to detect, especially with the new addition of AI. So we are urging the public to please take action. First, a reminder that law enforcement will never demand money over the phone. Second, establish a code or a phrase for your family to use to verify someone's identity in unexpected or potentially dangerous situations, and keep that information private. Third, learn how to protect yourself or your family at justice.gov/elderjustice. The more informed we are, the harder it is for criminals like these to succeed. Lastly, pay attention to the ones around you. Watch for the warning signs: sudden large withdrawals of cash, secrecy around phone calls, or panic after receiving a call regarding a loved one. If you believe you or someone you care about has been targeted or victimized, report it right away by using the contacts provided today or by calling your local police department. I want to thank the FBI Boston Field Division and our law enforcement partners in the Dominican Republic and the dedicated prosecutors in our office who are working every day to hold these types of perpetrators accountable. I will now turn it over to FBI Special Agent in Charge, Ted Dobbs.
Thank you, Leah, and good morning. My name is Ted Dox. I'm the Special Agent in charge of FBI Boston. Today we're here to announce the takedown of a transnational criminal organization that exploited one of the sacred bonds of our society, the relationship between a grandparent and grandchild. After 2 years of intensive investigative efforts, the FBI and our partners in the Dominican Republic have shut down a call center operating overseas in Santiago. We believe that call center was a front for massive fraud. This operation culminated earlier this morning when we set out to arrest 11 people, including 6 in the Dominican Republic, for their alleged roles in international mail, wire, and money laundering scheme. This scheme defrauded hundreds of unsuspecting, panic-stricken grandparents across the country and right here in Massachusetts out of millions of dollars. We also arrested 2 people prior to today's operation, to include one who was already admitted to his crimes. What the accused did in targeting our seniors was calculated, cold-hearted, and cruel. They shamelessly took advantage of their love and devotion to bilk them out of their hard-earned money. Imagine being 84 years old and getting a carefully scripted call from someone impersonating your grandchild, attorney, or law enforcement officer, claiming your loved one was in trouble, facing jail time, legal fees, and/or medical emergency, and in desperate need of help. In spouting this legion of lies, these alleged fraudsters did not just steal their victims' nest eggs, they stole their peace of mind, shattered their trust, and left behind a trail of heartbreak. What we found especially troubling about this operation was how modern and mobile it was. They turned apps meant to bring convenience and safety to our lives into tools of exploitation. Unwitting rideshare drivers were sent directly to victims' homes to pick up victims, bring them to the bank to withdraw funds, and deliver that money back to the accused, subjecting these drivers to suspicion and arrest. We believe those charged today tried to conceal their criminal cash flow by laundering their illicit proceeds back to the Dominican Republic through a complex network disguised as business transactions. The alleged mastermind behind it all, Oscar Manuel Castaños Garcia, had no shame about swindling these seniors, calling prospective new targets in New Hampshire and Maine, quote, fresh meat, and playing on their emotions so he can fund his lavish lifestyle. Let me be clear, the harm done here was significant. Retirements delayed, inheritances lost, lives turned upside down. Today's arrests do not right these wrongs, but they stop these individuals from victimizing anyone else. To the victims of these scams, who never told anyone what happened, out of shame and out of fear, I want them to know they're not alone. You are not foolish. You acted out of love, and you should not be ashamed. And to the families and friends of our seniors, have the hard conversations. Educate your loved ones about the different types of scams out there. Urge them to take a minute to ask questions and to call someone they trust. The FBI will never stop working to shut down schemes like this, to protect our elders from those seeking to take advantage of them. Because no grandparent should ever have to wonder if the next call they get, is it a cry for help or a trap? This investigation is a perfect example of how the private sector can work with law enforcement to protect the public. I want to express my sincere gratitude to Uber's global security and investigations team for bringing this case to us after discovering that their platform was being utilized for scams, and for proactively working to put mechanisms in place to prevent future losses to elderly victims. Last but certainly not least, thanks to the extraordinary work of FBI Boston's agents, their analysts, and professional staff, the Dominican National Police, and U.S. Attorney Leah Foley and her team. It's because of their work, key members of this organization are now in custody, facing federal charges that reflect the seriousness of their crimes. Thank you.
Do you think there are other victims out there that you don't know about right now?
I think there are, without doubt, other victims who just never reported the crime to anyone, whether it was because they just felt ashamed for being duped, or that sometimes they just haven't gotten to it or don't know what to do.
Can you talk about the sophistication of these phone calls? Like, did the alleged scammers actually know the names of these people's grandchildren and target specific people, or was it more generic than that?
Oftentimes they did know the names. They trolled the dark web and obtained names from there. And they didn't always know the name, but in many occasions they did.
Can you talk about the AI? Was that used in this case? Or sometimes they actually get your voice, they have the voice of the actual person?
So we haven't seen any evidence of AI being used by this crew in this case.
Talk a little bit more about the victims. What sort of population? I mean, you talked about all elderly population, but are they more of an immigrant background? Or are they more Dominican families that were targeted? Is it just a combination of people who fell victim to this?
There were over 400. There were 400 victims who were identified in this case so far. $5 million was scammed out of these 400 people. They were in California, New York, Florida, Massachusetts, Maryland. So they were scattered across the country. So don't believe there's any evidence indicating that they targeted a specific ethnic group.
You made reference to an app. Is that the Uber app that you're talking about, or Lyft? Or you talked about how this, can you talk a little bit about that? So there was some suspicion because they were...
Yes. So we obtained photos of the scripted, lines and conversations that the openers were to have. And a lot of times when they would call the Uber to send an Uber, they would call the Uber driver and say, my grandmother is going to be sending me some documents. She's going to put the box in your car and just bring it to me. And then other times, as discussed, they would pick the elderly person up and bring them to a bank and then take the money from the Uber driver would deliver the money to someone else.
So was it the Uber drivers who sort of first tipped you off about this because they were suspicious?
Yes. So yes, Uber Global Security identified the scam, and especially because it was going to elderly households, and they notified the FBI, and the investigation began.
Any of the drivers arrested at all, or were they not prosecuted?
No, they were unwitting. We haven't identified any Uber drivers who were participating in this scam. If we do, then we can add to the indictment. But Uber actually did revise, some of their trainings to notify their drivers and to just train them up into identifying these types of scams. So they were very cooperative.
Is there any hope for these victims to get their money back?
So it's often in these cases, the money pretty much is spent by the time we get there, but we have identified numerous assets in the Dominican Republic. We are working with our Dominican Republic counterparts to seize those assets and forfeit them. And we will continue to work with them to, if there are sales of those assets, to compensate victims.
Can you talk about what the call center looked like? You said that was shut down. Was that, were there a lot of people coming there every day? Or how did this work? Was it like a regular business?
So, do you want to?
I mean, I would say, I don't know if I want to say there's some pictures that are potentially up.
There
I
are.
wanted the photos of that. And so call centers, this one in particular is the picture that you see there. And, you have folks coming in to work various aspects of that particular call center. They were basically almost like telemarketing. They receive a script to the U.S. attorneys, to her point. They receive a script. They have these names off of the dark net and dark web. And then they utilize kind of that multi-calling feature to finally break in and then to swindle their victims. But I will say call centers generally can look a kaleidoscope of different ways, but that's the one that was utilized, at least in this particular.
The FBI has been warning about this in the U.S. Attorney's Office for a long time, about these scams and about how oftentimes they're out of the country, as this one is. How difficult is it when it's out of the country, and are you seeing trends in terms of specific areas or anything you're seeing in this whole area of elderly, fraud?
Yes, I would say that it's definitely the trends suggest that it's largely connected to overseas. I would say that that definitely presents some problems for us. That's where our partnerships, that's where the reach of the FBI, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, with our partners overseas, has been instrumental in helping to run down these subjects that reside overseas. And so, as you can imagine, this one in particular case, 400 victims, $5 million. And so that's a lot of money. People make it fairly quickly. And so it's something that folks overseas Definitely, they're doing this in epidemic levels. It's something that we're really trying to get our hands around, and that's where our partnerships and relationships with overseas partners like the Dominican Republic is so instrumental and vital to helping to solve some of these cases.
How good is the law in terms of extradition from the Dominican? Is that something that they're cooperating with?
We've already filed for extradition, and that process is beginning. And yes, they are cooperating.
If I can follow up, the reason why I was asking about the demographics of the victims, I'm trying to picture how this whole operation was going down. I mean, these scripts are in English, and this is happening in the Dominican Republic. I can almost imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, these are Dominican nationals making these phone calls, I would assume with some sort of accent, where they're taking advantage of people who spoke Spanish. Were some of these scripts at least in Spanish? Was there maybe, a lot of people who are maybe not necessarily U.S. speakers sometimes can also fall victims, maybe could arguably even easier than English speakers, just because they're not as up to date or aware of what's going on necessarily on the U.S. level. But
So the call.
paint a picture.
Yep. So the callers that they were using, the openers, were people who were bilingual and fluent in English and did not have a pronounced accent, so that they could disguise their voices in calling the identified people on the list that they had obtained.
Is there anything you can tell us which one is in custody and had already pled guilty?
So defendant listed as number 5 in the superseding indictment, Luis Germain Santos Burgos.
Already pled guilty.
He's already pled guilty.
Is there, and what was the second one that was in custody? Was the second one already in custody?
Defendant number 4, Juan Manuel Matilda Leon.
And so as of today, I think Christina was saying just before 9 are in custody. Does that sound right?
That is correct. 9 of the 13.
And none are going to be arraigned today.
Not today.
Just double checking, okay? I have in the note that, how many are there at large now?
There are still 4 who are at large, and law enforcement is out on the streets trying to locate them.
So all those that are at large are in the U.S. as far as you know?
2 in the U.S., 2 in the U.S.
2 in the U.S., 2 in the Dominican Republic.
Any other questions? I have a on topic if I can. There was an arrest regarding the vandalism that happened at the steakhouse. Is your office at all involved in this or the FBI?
No comment.
No comment.
Anyone else? Okay, all right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.